Okay, so let's do a crash course on the animation system in Blender. Alright, to get started, go here to where it says Default and choose Animation. This will give us the animation layout. Okay, and so going left to right from the center, we have the 3D view up here. We have the dope sheet, and it can also double as the action editor. I'll get into that later. It's back to dope sheet, and then here is the graph editor. Here is the timeline, so we can left click and drag the timeline along here. We can play the animation here. We can go back to the first frame. We can cycle through keyframes here, right? There's no keyframes yet. And then we can adjust the length of the animation, start and end frames here. As I said in an earlier video, we can scroll through with our mouse button here and Alt key, alright, or use the scroll wheel to scroll in and out like that. Also works in all these other views as well, just like here. Okay, and then coming further to the right, we have some of the items you might want to use for animating, not the least of which would be the output. I'll come back to that in a second. So if you're going to be using constraints on an object, that would be here in the constraints panel, parenting and so on. If you're using any modifiers, you'd find that there. And of course dynamics, if you're using dynamics, and not to forget shape keys would be here in the mesh panel. Okay, so that would more than likely be all the areas that you would use when animating. Okay, so let's go back to the output. Notice how this window is scrunched. If you alt drag, we can scoot it over. So if you want to make an OpenGL animation, you can click on for a still, you'd click on the camera. For an animation, you click on the little clapper. Okay, and that is the same here, except that this would be the final rendered animation, and this would be the final render. These two are just OpenGL, views of the scene, right? So escape out of there, and this would be an animation. I don't want to click on that because that's going to write stuff to the hard drive. So now to do that, you go down here to Output, and you have right where it says Output. This is where you're going to find the directory. Even if you're going to do an OpenGL viewport animation, you would come to here and you would select your file location and give it a name. I already did that, test, right? Accept there, and then you can below that you can choose the excuse me, okay, here we go. You can choose the format. So for now, let's just choose AVI JPEG, right? Okay, and so let's go into the front view, and let's just make a quick animation. So I'm gonna hit the I key on location, right? And then let's move up to another keyframe. Let's go to 90, and I'll grab it and put it up to here. Hit the I key again for location. So now we have our basic animation, and we're gonna hit 90 for the last frame there. Now you can see we have the ability to adjust things here. So in the dope sheet, let's just right click and drag the last frame over a little bit. Let's go over here and grab this keyframe curve and drag it down like that, and let's grab that one and pull it down a little bit like that. So now that we have a curve in that animation, the trajectory there. Okay, and then now go to the perspective view. I'm going to go all the way to the last keyframe, click on the cube, open up the channel box, and I'm going to go down here to rotation. Let's start at the beginning here actually, and I'm going to hit a rotation keyframe there, and then I'm going to go up to the last frame here, and I'm going to rotate it on the X by 360, and I'm going to hit a keyframe rotation, and so now we have a rotation there. And so let's just go ahead and make a full screen there and make an OpenGL preview. There we go. So now you've just done your first animation. Escape out of there, and then you can find that on your hard drive.